permanently to someone whose identity we can't even speculate about. And that's why it annoys me, and I hope some of you too, that those who say they have faith so often present themselves with a shrug, with modesty, with humility. Pardon me, don't mind me at all, I'm just doing God's will. I'm on an errand for the Creator. I just invite you to consider carefully, ladies and gentlemen, comrades, how modest is that? Not terribly. And is there not, therefore, a moral flaw, as well as the self-evident scientific and logical ones, at the very beginning of the argument of those who say that faith is something worth having instead of what I maintain it to be, the surrender of the only thing, our curiosity, our irony, our skepticism, our willingness to inquire, our willingness to doubt ourselves, our willingness to come to conclusions that are not welcome to us. The only faculty, in other words, that distinguishes us from those beasts who can't tell a hawk from a handsaw or a watch from a turnip. More recently, the argument's become, again, I hope I don't patronize you with the obvious, rather more complex. What design exactly? We used to think we knew roughly, okay, you can tell what the solar system is like, you can predict its movements, it has some kind of organization to it, fine. Can this be for nothing? Good question. Who's going to say this about what we now know about the cosmos? All we know now, the most we know, is how little we know about it. It doesn't act in a predictable way. How does curved time, how does the black hole, how does the event horizon fit into this argument from design? The answer is plain. It doesn't fit at all. It's completely incongruent with it. Everything we know, in other words, is arranged against the way we feel. Well, which is going to give way, the thought or the feeling, the emotion or the intellect? The religious have their answer ready-made. I don't. That's the big difference between us, I submit. In Genesis, which is a book held in common for no reason I can understand, by all monotheisms, there are, for example, no microorganisms. When the non-human kingdom is created, there are no microorganisms in it. Microorganisms are very important. They can kill you, for one thing. They're very intricately designed, for another. Religious belief went through various phases about this. When no one knew they were there, they used to say, well, if there's plague, God must want people to die. Except why don't they all die? Or why do some good people die and some bad people not? As an epidemiological observation, not very brilliant. Sometimes in bad moments they say, well, the plague, obviously there's plague because the Jews are putting poison in the water. The rabbi knows this history very well, as no doubt some of you do too. There are no marsupials in Genesis. They didn't even know what animals there were in Australia. There are no dinosaurs in Genesis. It's just that they are in creation. What am I making by way of an observation here? The simplest possible one. What are the odds that God created man when stacked against the odds that man created God? I submit that there is only one possible answer to that question. Of the millions and millions of false gods that have been created, is it likely that they were all equal perceptions of the same truth, from the Aztecs to the Buddhists, or that they're all equally improvised creations by man? Again, there's no possible way of disputing that proposition and making it even seem equal. None. There is a very, very small outside chance that of all these gods, one only one could be the correct one. This actually is the view of all true adherents of all monotheism. The other ones, no, they're a bit fraudulent. But ours, now this is something to kill for. Or perhaps, let's say, make it more compassionate, to die for. You can work out the difference there. And we're living at a time and speaking at a time and studying and reflecting at a time, ladies and gentlemen, when a page of Stephen Hawking is far more awe-inspiring than anything in Genesis or Exodus. Think about what is involved in the event horizon, the point where time begins and ends, the point where the black hole starts, the point where matter and light disappear. Consider it carefully. One of Hawking's friends says if he knew he was going to die, and he knew when, he would want to die by going to the edge of the event horizon and tipping over within, because in theory then, you could see the past and the future. Except, of course, you wouldn't have enough time. But that's innate in physics, not innate in the unfairness of life. Think about that and compare it to the burning bush. Or some other sinister fairy tale. Of course we don't live without awe. We don't live without a sense of the majesty and tremendousness of our universe. And nor do we live in contempt for ourselves. But we don't mistake the fairy tale for the real awe-inspiring stuff. We don't throw away the truffle and chew on the wrapper till our mouths go dry, in other words. So there's no reason to make any assumption about God or his existence or his design, or his will. It's neither a necessary assumption, nor a useful one, nor, I think, a moral one. And this means, if I'm correct, and if you follow me this far, that a very important conclusion follows. I will stand before you, I just have, and say there are things I can't know and don't know. There is awe-inspiring and majestic stuff going on where I don't presume to pronounce or to know. I'm happy with this conclusion. I don't mind not knowing. I don't mind submitting it to curiosity and inquiry and skepticism. But what can we say of those who do say they know? Who say they know what, not just who God is, but what his will is? And not just in the macro stuff about the non-creation of marsupials, for example, but in what to eat, and on what day, and what to wear, and what tactics to adopt between the sheets. This is what the holy believe they are entitled to do to you with this warrant from the unknowable divine. The one group that loses this argument before it begins must be those who say they know. They can be dispensed with. We can begin only from those who are willing to subject themselves to uncertainty and to skepticism, and the religious rule themselves out of that argument, as it were, a priori. The phrase mind-torched whack jobs that's in the introduction to this paper this evening naturally upset me very much. I hate to be offensive or to see religion lampooned. That's why I didn't call my book on Mother Teresa Sacred Cow, though I'll always somehow be sorry. Something in me will always feel sorry that I didn't do that. But why is it? Perhaps we should ask ourselves. Belief in religion does not make you a mind-torched whack job. But the appeal of this extraordinary pressure from the supernatural and the unknowable and the numinous and the distortions it imposes does seem to have a tremendous influence on mind-torched whack jobs. It's very seldom you come across a mind-torched whack job who isn't hearing voices and claiming to have instructions from God. Now, here's what I submit to you, and I do it uncynically, I hope. How can we tell that they're not telling the truth? How can we sort out their claim to have heard voices and been given divine instructions from anyone else's? Mr. Abu Musad al-Zarqawi, who is currently trying to take a very important country into a spiral of misery and poverty and shame and fascism, has, I was thrilled to see, renamed his jihad organization Monotheism and Jihad. How can I tell, how can anyone in this room tell whether his claim to be speaking Quranic truth is any better or any worse than anyone else's? For me, it's an open question. It's unverifiable, it's unprovable, it's unfalsifiable. These are all tests of the weakness of an argument, of course, but anyone who grants the first premise that it may be known, that it may be argued from holy books, that we may have divine instructions, is in no position to tell him that they're right and he's wrong. The only way of winning this argument is to consider all those claims on the same footing and the same basis and reject them, not in turn, but collectively, seriatim. How much am I trespassing on my allotted time?
You're great. You have 10 minutes.
That's very good of you to say so. And the 10-minute bit is good too. There's the Seder element in religion, in other words, and the Maso element, if you will. I'll start with the masochistic. Who wouldn't? They say, the Muslim says, Islam means surrender. It says, I feel just lucky to be able to say to God, do what you will with me. I'm unworthy. You were good enough to create me from a clot of blood. I am less than the dust. I surrender to your will, they say. The Christians mire themselves and attempt to mire others in a swamp of guilt and shame. They apologize for their existence, born in sin, wretched sinners to begin with. No invention, no quality, no rights of independence, no triumph of standing on 2 feet and using the brain. No, wretched, scum, condemned, born into a losing struggle, riffraff, groveling, saying, thank God someone was nice enough to be tortured to death 2,000 years ago without my permission so that I will live forever. Abject, serfdom, inviting it, self-hatred, misery. Judaism, rending the clothes, asking to atone, groveling and heaping dust on the shoulders, and indeed praying with thanks if you're a male Jew that you're not a female one. Abject peasantry. That's the masochistic bit. I find it more unattractive than I'll have time to say, but I hope you'll get a rough idea of how I feel about it. But okay, suppose someone thinks, okay, someone was good enough to die for me. I owe him. I'll live this abject, shuffling life. Fine. Wouldn't it make you happy if you thought that someone had gone to all that trouble to save you and you were saved? Wouldn't you feel content?